Hey guys, in this video, I'll be sharing with you a tutorial on how to sew this stylish asymmetric neckline corset with asymmetric hemline. So if this is something you like, kindly hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up. So let's dive right into today's video. So to make this dress, you'll be needing about 3 to 4 yards of fabric depending on your size. So I'm using 3 yards, and to start, I'll draft out my pattern. So I'm drafting out my pattern on fold. That means I'll be cutting the both sides together, right? So here's my shoulder to bust, under bust, waist, and I added extra 7 inches to my blouse length because of the asymmetric hemline that I have on this dress, right? Also, go ahead and mark all these measurements on the other side of your pattern also. Now, another way to cut this is to use the already made bra cup method. What I'm going to do is to go ahead to mark my shoulder divided by 2 and add extra ½ inch to it because this dress has a sleeve, and I'll come down by 1 inch. Now I'll mark a basic neckline of 3 inches, and after that I'll come down by 3 inches. I'm using this neckline here to serve as a guide for my pattern, and I'll connect this. Now I'm going to connect it back to my shoulder slope, from the neckline to the shoulder slope. The next step is to find your chest line or your armhole, which is your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. Now, after dividing mine, I got 7 inches and I made a mark there, and I'll draw a straight line. The next step is to go ahead to mark your shoulder divided by 2 again and add ½ inch. That is whatever you have on the shoulder, mark it on the chest line. Go ahead to place your tape, divide it into 2 and come out by ½ inch. Here, mark your bust circumference divided by 4. After marking that, I'll connect from the midpoint all the way up and from the bust circumference all the way to the midpoint of my pattern. So this is what I have here at this point. Now let's go ahead to mark out our darts. I'll start by marking my nipple to nipple divided by 2. My nipple to nipple is 7 inches divided by 2. I have 3.5 inches. And I'm going to mark this at the bust, under bust, waist and blouse length. Now go ahead to place your ruler, and you're going to draw out a straight line starting from the bust, connecting all the way to the blouse length of your pattern. I'll place my tape at the shoulder, and I'm going to go ahead to divide what I have there into 2 equal parts. This is from the neckline to the other side of the shoulder. After dividing it, I'll connect this all the way up. Now, for my under bust tightening, I'll be using 1 inch on both sides. Now, if you're on the plus size or you have a bigger bust, please go ahead to use 1.5 inches. I'll go ahead to connect all this line, going all the way from the under bust to the waist and from the waist to the blouse length of this pattern. So I went ahead to outline my pattern with my marker to make it more visible for you to see. Now place your curved rule starting from the bust all the way to the under bust and connect. Repeat this at the other side of your pattern, and I'll go in with my marker to outline. Now, after I'm done outlining at this point, I'll go up by 1.5 inches. Go ahead to measure from your shoulder to determine where you want the neckline or the cup to start. You can use 2 inches or 2.5 if you're on the busty side. So for my dart intake at the upper part, I marked 1 inch on both sides of my pattern. So if you're on the plus size or you're bossy, please go ahead to use 1.5 inches on both sides of this pattern. So after connecting, this is what I have, and I will go in with my marker to outline my pattern also. Now it's time to insert my measurement. My bust is 33 divided by 4. I have roughly 8.3 I'll mark. That I'll be replacing is this one towards the bust or the over bust area of my pattern. Then I'll replace it there, then add my sewing allowance. Now at the under bust, I'm going to mark my under bust circumference divided by 4, and I will mark. Measure these 2 inches that intake I have here, replace and add my sewing allowance. Now at the waistline, I'm going to mark my waist circumference divided by 4. Measure this that intake I have here, replace and add my sewing allowance. I'm just using 1.5 for my sewing allowance, which is not a standard, right? Now here I'll mark my hip circumference divided by 4. My hip is 40 divided by 4. I have 10 inches. I'll measure these 2 inches here and I'll replace, then add 1.5 inches for my sewing allowance. Now for this dress, if you don't want to add a sewing allowance, just joining allowance of half inch is okay, right? So I'll just connect from the bust to the under bust to the waist and down to the blouse length. Now after I'm done connecting that, I'll go ahead to outline, and next is to mark my bust dart. Now to get your bust dart, measure your shoulder to waist in front and measure your shoulder to waist at the back. Shoulder to waist in front is 17, while my shoulder to waist at the back is 15.5. If you take out 15.5 from 17, it will give you 1.5. That is how I got my bust dart, and you connect it to the nipple to nipple point, right? So after marking this, I'll go ahead to remark all this, or if you have a tracing wheel, just go ahead to trace out and reconnect it. This is what I have after I'm done marking on the other side, and I'll fold back my pattern. Now I'll place my tape starting from the upper part, and I'll measure the depth I want to use for the neckline of this dress, because the neckline is a deep neckline, right? Now from the top, I'll connect all the way to that point. So I'm making use of my freehand sketch here so that I can get exactly the waistline I want. Place my tape here about 1.2 inches for my bust gauging, and I'll go ahead to connect this to the under bust of my pattern. Next, I will go in with my marker and I'll go ahead to outline. Let's mark my cup on the other side. Now mark your nipple to nipple divided by 2, and I'll add extra half inch to it. So if you're on the plus size, add extra 1 inch to yours and blend out your dart when you're marking this. So I'll just go ahead to mark, and I will connect from that side with my curve drew all the way to the under bust, forming the cup of this side for my pattern. So this is what I have, and I'll go ahead to outline it. Now after I'm done outlining, I'll connect this all the way towards the armhole of my dress. This is my cup A and this is my cup B. What I'll do is to get my tracing wheel and I'll trace this all out. If you don't have a tracing wheel, you can use a sharp object to do this, or go ahead to draft out this pattern on the other side completely. After that, I'll just go ahead and use my curve drew to start drawing out those areas, that is tracing out all those marks. It might not be visible to you because it's more like a mark on a paper, right? So I'll just label and draw out these parts. Now the next step I'll take is to work on the neckline of this dress. So for the neckline of this dress, I'm going to extend it by half inch before connecting. That is the initial 3 inches neckline, add half inch, making it 3.5 inches, and I'll connect, right? I'll just take it close to this part of my cup, and then from here also I'm going to reconnect on the other side. So this is what I have at this part, and if you notice, I didn't really use the straight part of my ruler to connect it. So after marking this now, I'll outline the armhole area, and before we go ahead to work on the lower part or the asymmetric hemline of this dress. Before doing that, I'll just go ahead to use my marker to outline my pattern, and I'll label it as center front, middle front and center front. Now from here, I'll measure about 5.5 inches and go up by 1.5 inches. While recording the rest of this part, my camera stopped recording. So what I'll do is to explain what I did. So I marked 5 inches from here, and from that point I came up by 1.5 inches. Now come in by your sewing allowance first. Sewing allowance of 1.5. Make sure you come in before drawing out the curve all the way to the other side. Blend out your dart and you start extending this. So I even extended more by half inch at the lower part. So I feel like when I'm cutting this out, I will add like little to it again. Came in by half inch and I'll be going up by 5 inches all the way from this point. Now this is not a standard. This varies from your body size or measurement, or whatever that suits you rather. Now I'll go ahead to use my marker to outline my pattern to make it more visible for you to see. Now after I'm done outlining at this point, I'll just go ahead to reconnect to start reconnecting to this side, blend out the darts here, and I'm going to start connecting towards the other side. Now what you do is to place your tape and measure about 5 inches here and come up by 1.5 inches from the side. Also come in by your sewing allowance and go ahead to join this towards that side. So after marking this, I'll just go ahead to outline my pattern by the side, and I will now cut this out, right? So if you have any questions so far, please kindly go ahead to ask. So the next step is to go ahead to cut out this pattern. So at this point, if you haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, please kindly hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, leave your comment at the comment section, right? So while cutting this out, at the dart point, blend it out and then merge it up towards the side. So I'll just go ahead and cut out the lower part of this pattern also. Now while cutting the cup area, please go ahead to merge it up, or you can just slash out the darts and pin or sellotape your cup together. So I'll just cut this out. Now while cutting out the lower part of my pattern, if you notice on the dress, you notice that there is no joining towards the lower part. So I'm going to cut that lower part, that is the bodice of this corset, as one piece without joining. What I'll do is just to go ahead to cut out the cup area, and I'll be merging up the lower part of this pattern. So I'll just cut out this asymmetric side also, cut here. Now just like I said, I'll merge up my pattern so that when I'm making it, I'm just going to have one piece for the lower part. I have a top bund. What I'll do is I'll just make use of little of it, apply it and glue this together, right? If you have a tape, you can go ahead to tape it up together, and I'll also go ahead to blend out this side of the pattern this way. Now after blending it, I'll also tape it together and I'll cut out the excess. This is what I have, and I'll be cutting this out on the fabric. So now here is the back pattern. I already marked out my zipper allowance. For your zipper allowance, you can use 2 inches to 1.5. I marked my shoulder divided by 2 plus half. Now I'm marking 3.5 inches by 1.5 for the back neckline, and I'll go ahead to connect. After marking this, when you're marking your pattern, right, you're going to use like a dart, that is your nipple to nipple divided by 2, which you're going to mark from the beginning to the lower part of your blouse. But for this particular pattern, I'll be using a dartless pattern, right? Because if you look at what we have on the dress, it's as if it's a dartless pattern. You can also add your dart and blend it out, which is still okay. But I'm going to make the back very simple. I'll mark my bust circumference divided by 4, add 1.5 inches for my sewing allowance, mark my waist circumference divided by 4, and add my sewing allowance. Here at the blouse length, I added 5 inches after the waistline for the blouse length at the back. I marked my hip circumference divided by 4 and I added my sewing allowance. So in case you're wondering why I added 5 inches to after the waistline, this is because at the lower part of this blouse at the front, I just marked extra 5 inches before going up by 1.5 inches. So there's no need marking extra 7 inches after the waistline, right? So now I'll still go up by that same 1.5, which I did for that of the back of the front pattern. Now I'll just go ahead and I'll connect this down. I'll go in with my zipper bulge, which I'll mark 1/2 inch here. After marking 1/2 inch, I'll extend this all the way to the lower part of my pattern, and I'll be extending this to the upper part also. This is to get rid of the bulginess at the back of the dress. I'll outline my chest line at this area of my pattern. After marking this, I'll come down by 1/2 inch. This is to tighten the back part of this dress so that I will not have any gaping or excess at this part. So after marking this, I'll just come down by 1.5 inches at this point. Now you notice my nipple to nipple point. I'm going to place my curve drew, connect it here to that point, and you'll be adding like a loop at this upper part. Now I'll come up by 0.5 inches again, connect it to my yoke. I'm trying to tighten the back of this blouse so that I will not have any excess or gaping. half inch I took out at the waistline of the zipper bulge, I'll return it to here and blend it out. This is because I don't want to have a reduction at the zipper part. So the reason why we are taking out the zipper bulge is to flatten the back of the dress, because there's no bust at the back, and at the center of your back you notice that that part went slightly deeper than the other parts of your back. Now I'll just go ahead to cut out. So now I'll just go ahead to cut out my pattern. At this point, notch where you have your yoke meeting that your nipple to nipple point. And if you have any question regarding this pattern, please go ahead to leave your question at the comment section. Now let's cut the lower part of this pattern. So first I'm going to open up my pattern and I'm going to spread it out. Now to cut out your skirt, the first measurement you need is to know what you're going to fold with. My hip is 40 inches divided by 4. I have 10. Now I'm adding additional 2 inches for my sewing allowance, right? Now after marking that, I'm going to place my tape. That is the starting point, and my skirt length is 40 inches, which I'll add additional 2 inches to it for folding allowance. Now I'll just mark out that 40 inches to serve as a guide, right? Now at the upper part of this pattern, I'll go ahead, place my tape, and I'm going to measure 7 inches to get my hip point. If you're on a much taller side, please go ahead to use 8 inches to get this. Now after marking at this point of my pattern, at the waist, I'll mark my round waist measurement divided by 4. Now I'll be adding a dart. To add a dart, mark your nipple to nipple point divided by 2. Now for my dart extension at the lower part, I'll be using 5 inches dart intake. Now I'll mark half inch on both sides of this pattern, which I'll blend out towards this side. So you go ahead to sew out your dart. Now this 1 inch dart intake we took out here, replace it by the side, then add 2 inches, which will serve as your sewing allowance, right? So I'll mark these 2 inches here. And after that, I'll go ahead to mark my hip circumference here, and I'll add additional 2.5. So sorry, I used 2.5 inches for my sewing allowance, not 2 inches. So fold, you can fold with 2 inches or 2.5, it is still okay. Now I'll place my tape at my waist and mark my waist to knee point. My waist to knee point is about 21 inches, and I'll come up by 2 inches from that point. Now I'll place my ruler and draw out a straight line there. After marking that, whatever measurement you have towards the hip, take out 2 inches from that point and go ahead to mark it out, right? If you have like 12 inches, you're going to mark 10 inches here. Unless you don't want your skirt to be too fitted, you can go ahead to use 1.5 inches at the lower part. So after marking this now, I'll just go ahead to connect. I'll go ahead to place my curved drew, connect from the upper part to the hip and all the way to the lower part of my pattern. After marking this, I'll just go ahead to cut this out. While cutting out, I added an addition of half inch at the upper part, which you're going to use to add your waistband to this dress. Now after cutting this out, I placed it on another fabric. Now we are going to add our zipper allowance to the front. For my zipper allowance, I'm using 1.5 inches, right? Now you can use 2 inches if you want. Now after making sure I have 2 inches, I'm just going to go ahead to trace out the shape I have from the side of my pattern all the way to the lower part. After tracing this out, I'll go ahead to slit the front of this dress open. So after slitting this dress, that is the back, we are done with today's tutorial. So join us in our next video where we'll be stitching up this dress. So if you find this video very interesting and educative, please kindly hit on the subscribe button and join us in our next video.